Okay, welcome everybody. Glad that you're here. Thanks for showing up today on this live stream of our interview with one of the survivors from the Hudson miracle back in the year 2009, as depicted now in the Tom Hanks movie Sully. We are excited to be able to speak today with Mike Kollmansberger. Did I say that right?
That's right.
That's right. He's going to be our special guest today. So this is crew interviewing Mike. My name is Shelby Abbott. I'm on staff in the Mid-Atlantic region, right outside of Philadelphia, and I'm talking from that area right now. And we're talking to Mike, who is down in Columbia, South Carolina. Thanks for joining us today, Mike. I'm really excited that you're here and you're willing to spend some time talking to us about what you went through. And then, of course, what we really want to kind of transition to eventually is talking about how we can use the event that happened back in 2009, and then specifically the movie that's out in the theaters right now, to be able to initiate and engage in spiritual conversations with people who may have seen the movie or are interested in seeing the movie, and really talk to people about how to have a relationship with Jesus using something that's popular, like Oscar bait movie that Tom Hanks is in, directed by Clint Eastwood. So let's kind of frame the story so that people kind of know what happened with you and kind of your experiences. So can you tell us a little bit about what was going through your head specifically on January 15th, 2009, when the announcement was made that the plane would be landing in the Hudson River? Because it was just 3 words, right, that came from Sully?
It was. Would it be okay to give a little backstory?
Yeah, totally. Paint the picture for us.
Okay. I work with a HVAC water treatment company that's based in New York, and every year they have a technical training that's in Long Island City, and so all of the regional offices would send their folks, I'm one included, up there, and we would spend a few days together. Well, we were there from Tuesday to Thursday, and we had the 2:45 flight out of LaGuardia back to Columbia via Charlotte. It had been snowing and it was miserable, especially when I got in the cab and his back window wouldn't roll up. So we're driving down and snow is coming in my window. Mm-hmm. I just remember how poignant that was. Well, the skies cleared up and somebody said, as we were waiting, we were there at the airport early. Yeah. They said, well, it looks like a great day to fly. And it did look like a great day to fly. Cue the geese. Yeah. And so we arrived there, and it was very cold. It was as in January. It was 30. Right. The water was 37 degrees. The ambient temperature outside was 17.
Oh my man! So okay, freezing cold outside, but obviously you were able to take off. It wasn't preventing you at all. I've been on a plane before where they had to de-ice it and all that kind of stuff. It took a long time to get off because it was snowing, but that wasn't the case with you. How long did you taxi before the plane took off? Did it feel normal? I know that you had talked to me before about the fact that you're a little bit nervous on flights anyway.
Well, right. I did have a stint overseas, and we traveled quite a bit, my wife and I. So I've flown back and forth across the pond in the United States a lot. So I really don't feel like I'm justified in feeling nervous and flying, but I am. Okay. And even that very day back in January 2009, I kind of walked myself through this "it's well with my soul" mantra, because I'm not comfortable flying, and I wish I could just pray it away, but it hasn't worked. So I just continually put myself in God's hands and say, whatever happens, you're in control. I know that, I believe it, I receive it. Here we go in this airplane. So that's what I had done, and I was talking with my brother-in-law, and I skipped all of the pre-flight instructions. He completely ignored it all, and we talked about sales and everything, and then we had to wait about 15 minutes. Our scheduled flight was 2:45. I think we actually got taxied out of there at 3:03. I think that's right.
Okay, so you were actually on the plane with your brother-in-law. You were sitting next to each other?
That's correct, and he's my boss.
Okay.
As well. So that's why we were attending the same conference.
Okay. And now what row were you in specifically?
12. He was 12D, which is the aisle. I'm 12E, which is the middle. The Airbus A320 is a 3 and 3. Okay. And so we were in the 12th row, which is the second exit above the wing. So as if you see the airplane, you'll see 2 exit doors above the wings on both sides. I was 1 row behind the story, but in effect, I had to jump 1 row of seats to get out.
Okay. All right. So let's back up again. Let's see, like you guys are taxiing out for about 15 minutes or so, and then you take off.
Right.
How long is the plane actually in the air before you hear something that goes wrong?
Well, I think I'd actually dozed off. I'd tell you the truth. I tried to sleep whenever I can on the plane. So if nothing else, I was almost asleep. And then we reached an altitude of about 2,800 feet. So it was 30 seconds maybe. Yeah. And I don't know how to explain the noise I heard. I just tell people, imagine you've got a gigantic textbook that you had from your school days, and you took it and you slammed it as hard as you could on a table. That's what it sounded like. And it jolted me immediately. And I thought, oh my gosh, what was that? And we're all looking around each other, not knowing what had just happened. But it was very loud, very distinctive. But only I think a few people really knew, hey, I think we had a bird strike. Because as I looked up into first class, I could see a little puff of smoke or something. And then others said later on, when I talked to others, they said they smelled a burnt smell. But for those of us in the front and on top of the wings, we didn't know anything more than that. Later on, I found out the people in the back could see, fire shooting out the engines, but I wasn't privy to that at the time.
Okay, so for everybody who doesn't know the story specifically, what actually flew into the engines? Because it wasn't just a tiny little Sparrow, right?
Right. The engines are designed to withstand full speed impact of a 7-pound bird. Anything over 7 pounds, they can't. They are oscillating, rotating fan blades, and they're easily disturbed if there's enough force. Well, okay. We hit a large family of Labrador Canada geese, full size. They're 26 pounds. They destroyed the engines immediately. We didn't know that. I think even watching the movie, you'll see Jeff and Sully, Jeff Skiles, the first officer, they didn't know the engines were destroyed. They knew they were losing power. And if you've seen it, you said they roll back on engine 1, roll back on engine 2. That's what they experienced. They were trying to assess. We had no idea. I didn't even know there were any birds. I just knew there was a really loud noise, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what's going on?
Yeah. Okay. So both engines were out, and there's fire shooting out the back of the engines, so people in the back can see that. You couldn't necessarily do that. After 30 seconds afterwards. So how long between when you hear that textbook slamming noise and then you realize that you're going to have to land, and you look out the window and you see that it's heading toward the Hudson River instead of back to LaGuardia or some other airport? What happens between the loud noise and when you guys actually landed in the river?
Well, so we had no idea what was going on. That's the clearest. People oftentimes think that there was cockpit communication to us. There was zero. We knew nothing. And as in retrospect, that was appropriate. They were dealing with a crisis. They had no idea what to do, and they didn't need to inform us because we were just passengers. But immediately, the thing that I remember was I could feel the plane come up and over and down. So it's to point the nose down to regain speed, and we banked at the sharpest angle I've ever been in an airplane. And I was looking straight down at the water as I looked out the window. I thought, this is massive, this bank that we're doing. And so later on, I learned that was lining us up for the Hudson. That was one of the things that Sully did, was immediately line us up for the Hudson and then try to find an alternate route. Didn't know any of that at the time. So we see that we're out over water, and we're gradually descending, and I'm talking with my seatmate, who lives in France, and he says, well, there's Teterboro over there in New Jersey. That's over there in New Jersey. I'm not a New Yorker. I'm from Texas originally. I didn't know the geography very well, and I knew that there is a runway that extends out over water at LaGuardia. I presumed we've lost an engine. We're going to go back over to that runway. There'll be fire trucks. There'll be emergency personnel. This will be quite the thing. And my brother-in-law leaned over to me and said, well, I think we've had a bird strike. We're going to miss our connecting flight. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to miss it. And all the rest of the flights the rest of my life, because I don't put up with this. I'm nervous enough as it is. Why in the world would I do that? So I just was kind of shaking my head. We really didn't know. And I believe it was 90 seconds before we actually hit the water. We actually heard the one and only thing that from the instructors, from the staff, i.e. Sully, and that was, and it was as cool and deadpan as this: brace for impact. That's what it was. It still gives me chills to relay it to you today, because it is as real to me as anything. And I couldn't believe it, because at that moment, and Shelby, stop me if I'm answering something you didn't ask, but at that moment, a switch went off inside of me, and I thought, we're dead. Yeah. Not maybe, 100% certain that we're dead. He's going to try. He's going to try to put this plane down on the water, and we're going to fail. I thought we were going back on a limping engine back to LaGuardia. His proclamation at that point said, no, we're going down. And I knew there was no possibility of a intact airplane when we hit the water.
Yeah, because like you see all those videos, at least now you're able to view videos online when like things land like that, they just crash apart, completely disintegrate. And plus it's freezing cold water and, with a lot of speed. Okay, so when you're going down, you're aiming towards the river. Did you say anything to your brother-in-law at that time?
Yeah, I think after I realized this is really happening, before I said anything to him, I felt several things. Well, let me back up and answer the question first, and that would be, I realized it was the end.
Okay.
And I said to him, I love you, brother. This is it. I mean, I needed to say my piece to him. I mean, he and I have a very good relationship, so there wasn't anything outstanding. But in my mind, I had closed the book with him. I was now prepared to die because that's what I expected to happen as soon as we hit the water.
Okay. So, not many people know this, but you're a former staff member with Crew.
Right.
So you are a believer. You follow Jesus. You know where you're going to go. If you're going to die, you're about to meet him. In your mind, that's probably the main thing on the forefront of your mind. As you guys start to go down, kind of walk us through what happened as the plane lands in the water.
Well, I think, as I was alluding to earlier, I think the thing was how shocking all of this was. You get on an airplane, you go to your destination. That's the way it works. Happens thousands and thousands and thousands of times per day, each day, in the United States and around the world. So you never expect anything to happen. As a matter of fact, one of the passengers later on had said, as we were lifting off, boy, they've just taken all of the drama out of flying. And lo and behold, look what happened,
Wow.
30 seconds later.
Yeah.
But I think I was so shocked. I wasn't scared at all. I was so shocked that this was happening, because it's not supposed to happen, but yet it was happening. And I think what flashed in front of me was, I have an unborn child and 4 other children at home. I have a wife who's about to lose her husband. This is not supposed to happen. I'm supposed to grow old with my wife. I'm supposed to get gray and get an RV, and she and I go visit our kids and our grandkids. And this is the plan that I had for our lives, and it is ending in 10, 9, 8. That's what I was expecting. Now, personally, I was completely at peace in my heart, because, and I've told a lot of people this, even confronted with my imminent death, which I don't want to blow out of proportion, but I knew that was going to happen. I knew I was about to come face to face with Jesus Christ. I knew it, no doubt in my mind whatsoever, because as a college student, first-year college student, I've settled that matter. I realized that there is a creator to this. There's a creator to my life, creator to everything, and that he uniquely designed me, not only every single person, but he uniquely designed me, and that I can have a personal relationship with him. And at that, as a freshman in college, I made that choice. And so that to me was unquestioned. I was completely at peace about it. And I actually part of me was, I think, even excited to finally see. I've read the Bible so much. I've read so many things that I look forward to the day to meet him, but I wasn't ready for it. Right. I didn't want it today, right. But I was ready. Yeah. And so I was at peace. I said to my brother-in-law sitting next to me, I made peace with him. And I said, this is it. I mean, that was, that's how I felt. And as I would look out the window, we were coming down about the normal speed that you would in an airplane, but the angle of approach was much sharper. I don't know if that makes sense, but some people it probably will. You come in very gradually when you're approaching an airport or a runway, but we were coming in much sharper.
Like this sharper with
Seemed,
the nose
it
up?
seemed that way.
Okay.
You know.
All right. So when the belly of the plane, or like at least the back of the plane, hits the water, what happens? Walk us through that process as well.
Well, when we hit, well, some of it is hard to remember exactly, but when we hit, obviously, as in you've read and seen, he put the tail down first as he was supposed to. He kept the nose up to keep, an airfoil, to keep lift.
Right.
And so the back took the hardest hit, and I was about halfway in the plane. So it was a strong, strong jolt. People ask me, what did it feel like? And I say, well, I don't know if I can really describe it, but imagine you're on that ride. Let's say you're in Orlando and you go to the water flume ride where you, Brer Rabbits, I forget the name of it, but it's a water ride, and it goes down and the log hits the water and water blows out everywhere. Yeah. I guess multiply that times 10. That was what it was like. We hit the water. It was a hard jolt. And then we had another jolt when we scooped and ripped off the left engine. And to me, that was an even harder jolt because it wrenched the whole plane around like so. It almost was like a large scoop and then wrenched the plane around. And then it stopped immediately. That's how it felt.
Okay.
At that moment, the cabin was dark, and I popped my eyes open and looked, and I was still in the airplane. I can't ever relay to any people watching this. I can't explain to you when you're sure something is going to happen, and it doesn't. The shock, yet again, first time shock that has happened, shock yet again that I'm not dead, and now there's light coming into the cabin as the guy, Don Norton, took the door off and threw it out into the water. It's indescribable, really.
Yeah. Okay. So, is there panic on the plane after that? Is there I'm sure everybody's blood is coursing with adrenaline. There's like this whole system going on of how to evacuate a plane. Do the stewards and the flight attendants, do they help to get people off? Like what's happening after the plane is stopped?
That's a great question. What you saw in the movie or what you've heard where the flight attendants started their chant, brace, brace, head down, that did indeed happen. However, the ones and people in my row, the flight attendants were not a part of our story. They were in the back and they were in the front, and we couldn't hear them anyway. So I never actually heard the chanting, but I've talked to enough people to know that it actually indeed did happen. I never saw them. I never interacted with them during the whole time. But we in the middle just, I guess, instinctively knew to evacuate. Now, Captain Sully did come out and say evacuate. And I remember hearing that because he was very loud, and we all filed out. So the general mood when we all sprung into action was, I think, very concerted, focused effort. People have asked me, did you look around and see what people are doing? Did you grab your things? No, I had tunnel vision. I had get out that door, get out that window, and that's all I saw. And I immediately reached down, pulled up my seat, and you can see it in that picture that I sent you. I pulled up my seat and I grabbed it, my seat cushion, and it came up really easy. And I said to my brother-in-law, David, David, grab your seat cushion, because we didn't know what we were going into. We really, at that point, now we had not been killed, but what's next? We had no idea. We didn't know where we were. We didn't know we had just cleared the George Washington Bridge and almost got killed there by 500 feet. I mean, that's miraculous that we didn't hit that bridge. That would have destroyed everyone in the plane, and it would have killed everyone on the bridge had that happened. But at that point, it wasn't bedlam, it wasn't chaos, it was very focused. I think everyone knew they had to get out, and they were doing everything they could. Now, in the very rear of the plane, I think it was a lot more panicked because there was water coming in very fast. It was very cold. And so they didn't know the threat level. They didn't know, are we about to sink and go under, and do I need to, get out immediately? So, but we did. We got out as fast as we could and started filing out on the wing. Okay.
So you showed me a picture earlier that you had with you of what the plane looked like. Can you hold that up to the camera so that we can see? This was a billboard, an ad that ran for a long time. Up a little bit higher. There it is. You guys are coming out of the plane that way. And so obviously the the air raft things are deployed on the side. People are standing on the wings of the plane. Do you know, are you in this shot specifically? Were you in that?
No, you can't see me. You can't see me on that shot. I'm on the, tell me if I've got it high enough.
Yeah.
I'm on this side right here. Can you see that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be closer to the body of the airplane.
Okay.
Because what had happened is we had a hard time getting the raft deployed. It aired up immediately whenever you opened the doors, yeah. But it had flipped upside down. So me and two other guys struggled to get it right side up, and then we backfilled because they had come out onto the wing, and then we had ladies and children first backfill and get into the raft, and then we were able to then load it up. And then at that point, we just stood and waited. Okay. And after about, I guess it was a minute and a half. I really am not a good judge of time, honestly, because I was in such a shocked condition. Yeah. After about a minute and a half or so, we saw a ferry boat coming straight for us. And the captain of that boat was Vince Lombardi, who's now a friend of mine. And we keep up on Facebook, and he's also in the movie playing himself. But he saw what happened, and he got everybody into position and immediately came out after us. I felt, as I exited the cabin of the craft and looked out and saw Manhattan, and I'm on this 85-ton aircraft that was just 3,000 feet in the air. Now it's floating on down the river in the water. I thought, how could this be happening? This doesn't even make sense. It's something, a visual picture in my mind I'll never forget. But we were there, and we didn't know what was going to happen. But so when I saw the ferry boat coming for us at full speed, and it was coming at full speed, I knew we were going to be okay.
Yeah. And then for those people who have not seen the movie or don't know the story, everybody was able to get evacuated from the plane. There were no deaths at all. You said a few people got hurt in that part. Those injuries were, considerably minor in comparison to death, right. Of course. And it really is a miracle. It's just an absolute miracle. Is there any other details of the story that you feel like you missed that you wanted to fill in? Because what we wanted to do, actually, I have a few more questions for you. We wanted to take some questions as well from anybody who might be watching live right now. So if you look on the left side of your screen on the site where you're watching on YouTube, there's a place where you can actually enter in questions. If you have some specific questions for Mike that you feel like has not been answered yet, we'd love for you to type those in, and I can ask them for you here on the live stream. But are there any other details that we missed, or maybe?
There's so many things, Shelby, like I told you, there's so many things that I could talk a lot about, but I think I would focus on a couple things, and that is when I've talked to Captain Sullenberger in the years since, and when you've heard him speak publicly or in his book, he will deflect the idea that it was a miracle, and I'm okay with that. He'll say we perfectly executed according to our training, and he's right, that 100%. They did exactly what they needed to. Had someone not as experienced and such a gut level, excellent flyer been at the controls, I'm quite certain we would all be dead. I don't really have any doubt about that. But at the same time, I look at it as, yes, I think it's still a miracle because all of the other things to me that are unexplained. For instance, if we'd not had the altitude, if we'd struck geese any sooner, we wouldn't have cleared the bridge. We would have been killed. How in the world at 3:30 in the afternoon on a Thursday on the Hudson River are there no boats in the way? There's none. It was perfect. There was nothing there. We had a clear runway. I mean, to me, these things are amazing. Also, a little known fact is not all airplanes are EOW, which means equipped over water. That means they actually have flotation devices that air up. Most people don't ever think about that. That's all I think about these days when I fly. Is this a craft equipped with inflatable life vests, and does it have inflatable slides? I look at that stuff now. I memorize. I look at and I even volunteer for the what do you call that? The exit door. Yeah, the exit row. I volunteer, and I've told flight attendants, I'm like, yes, I have firsthand experience with this, and they go, oh my gosh, are you serious? But when I look at little details like that, to me, it's a miracle, maybe not in the way that we think of it, that God actually intervened with his hand, but he caused other things to miraculously come to pass. And so the fact that something that never happens, which is a forced water landing with no deaths, to me says it all. It truly was a miracle.
Yeah. Okay. So, obviously this is, kind of a life defining event for you. How is it in your everyday faith life, knowing, for example, your fear of flying came to a very, you had a fear of flying before this event occurred.
Right.
It came to a very real actualization for you. What is it like in your everyday life of experiencing walking with God, knowing that God allowed this to happen in your life? How has that changed your perspective on your relationship with God? Has there been ups and downs? What has your experience been like since the crash?
I don't know that it's changed my perspective of my relationship with God. I think it is further affirmed that he cares, not only for me, but any of his daughters or sons, and that he is personally involved. I think it's easy for people to think, well, he's done all these big things, but on a day-to-day basis, he's not involved, or he's not involved, or he doesn't care in the minutia of my own life. Well, I would have to say, yes, he does. And it may be an aircraft landing on the water, or it may be something super simple as a note of encouragement. You never can tell. But I firmly believe that this was an act of mercy to me and to everyone else, that comes from God's hand. So when let's say I have a rough day or something bad happens, I can remember tangibly, not only do I know the truths of the Bible, that they are unchanging and that God's character is unchanging, but not only that, I can know that he's acted on my behalf in so many ways, even before this airplane incident, but with such a poignant expression through the airplane incident.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Now, how can you see people, well, you have seen the movie Sully, right?
I have.
You did see they did a special screening for you guys. Is that correct?
They did.
Or anybody who was on the plane or kind of involved in the whole process.
That's right. They had a screening in Charlotte for passengers and their families, and also in New York.
Okay. So I actually have 2 tickets. I haven't seen it yet, but I have 2 kids. I have 2 small kids, so I have 2 tickets to go see tonight, literally at 7:00. So I'm really excited. My wife and I are going to go. And how basically do you feel like people could use this movie, seeing this movie, and use it to engage with others in spiritual conversations?
Well, it's a little different for everyone else in that it wasn't their own personal experience. For me, it's very personal. It's very it's as real as it can be. But for those people, I think the takeaway is when you dialogue with someone, hey, what do you think about the Miracle on the Hudson? Or, wow, I saw that Sully movie and it was pretty amazing. I think everybody immediately reacts and internalizes it. Maybe I'm wrong, but they can imagine. They ask the question, what was it like? What happened here? What happened there? Because they are asking themselves, what would I do in that situation? Or how would I feel? Yeah. And I think it raises the question, man, you guys didn't die. That's what I expect to happen. So if you're a student or you're a staff person, or if you're just having a discussion with someone at the grocery store and it comes up, you name it, I would say, do you believe, why do they call it a Miracle on the Hudson? Why do you think they called it that? Do you believe in miracles? I know a guy, or I listened to a guy talk about it, his own personal experience, and he felt like it was a miracle. If that were to happen to you, what would be your feeling? What would be your response? What would be your perspective? And do you have the same assurance that this guy that I listened to, he has, that he knew he was going to die and he was okay with it. He was comfortable with it, his impending death, because he knew confidently that he knew Jesus Christ personally. Do you have that same assurance? And so you could probably, Shelby, talk about it so many different ways, but I think the central point to that is people are afraid of death. People are afraid of being in a tight spot like that, or an emergency, or they have a fear of airplanes or flying. And this taps into it. I think it's part of the reason why it's got such national attention is it's something that people fear, and they don't have to. And even though I am still nervous and flying, I know I don't have to be afraid of it. I just continually push through and say, Lord, I'm in your hands, as I am every single day. I'm in your hands. But as for someone who wants to bring it up in terms of spiritual conversation, I think the point that people identify with is that concern and, oh my gosh, what if that had happened to me, and how would I have reacted? And what? So I think the next subsequent question is, what would have happened to you? What is your spiritual condition? Are you prepared to go through an event like that?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm so you look back on these like tragedies or horrific events, and sometimes the people, of course, many years after them, in many circumstances, when I talk to people about this, that it's something that what can seem like this horrific curse is actually a real huge blessing, and God is giving you this opportunity to take this really tragic, potentially horrific event and turn it into an opportunity to talk to people about miracles, your relationship with Jesus, and how he's changed your life. And we could utilize that as well. I love how you took the concept, because it's the miracle on the Hudson is something that probably the media came up with, and then you're able to spin that in a way to use it for transitioning into gospel conversations. This is just beautiful. I love that. Like you said, we talked about the movie. You saw the movie. Was the movie pretty accurate in accordance to like what actually happened on the plane?
I think so. Overall, I would say it's extremely accurate overall. There are some things that I noticed that weren't the case. For instance, and I don't want to spoil it for you, but I will give you a clue. That at one point they have two or three guys who are flying down to Myrtle Beach. They're going to go golfing, and they come up late. Well, that didn't actually happen. Came, those three guys, and I knew them, and I recognized them immediately in the movie. They were right behind me as we boarded the airplane. And matter of fact, I told my wife, I'm like, those are the guys that were making fun of me in my laptop, And so it's funny to see these guys played on screen. I had a personal interaction with those men themselves. And so that's the thing that really got to me. I'm coming full circle to say, I saw what happened to me on screen, and it was very unusual. I didn't know how to process that. And so watching the film was troubling for me, because it was so accurate, because it was able to conjure up feelings that I'd forgotten about, feelings that it felt like it just happened yesterday. It was not, although it was a miracle, and although God saved us, no doubt about it, it was still hard to walk through. I went a couple of months where I just couldn't go to bed. I would just sit until I would fall asleep on the couch. I would just literally nod off. I don't know what it was. I couldn't feel comfortable enough just to go lay down in my bed. So I had a tough go of it for quite a while. And so those feelings resurfaced as I'm watching the movie. My pulse was quickened. My stress level was high. I was very angry at how they treated Captain Sullenberger during the first part of the movie. Those emotions I didn't know were so close to the edge and so raw, but they were there, and the movie surfaced them. So I left and I went, wow, what a great movie. What a great job Clint Eastwood and his team did. I can't watch that again.
Yeah. I can a little bit relate. I don't know if I've talked to a number of different Christians, for example, who watched the movie The Passion of the Christ when it came out in 2004. I don't remember. It was around the time when I was on staff on a campus at James Madison. I watched it in the theater one time, and then I bought it when it came out on DVD, but I have not watched it. I own it, but I have not watched it. I could not go back to it again. I couldn't. It was too difficult for me. And I joke about it a lot now, but because I want to actually go back and see it again, but it's so like personal. It feels so personal. I can't imagine what it's like to actually see your life up on the screen, right, what you went through, and it's so unbelievably personal. Well, one of the questions that's actually come from online was from a young woman named Emily. She said, coming home, how has your life been impacted in terms of your role and purpose as a husband and father? How has that changed?
I think for me, well, let me give a little bit of background. I don't think we covered it. My wife and I have 6 kids. We've been married about 20 years. They range from ages 4 to 18. So this event happened 7 years ago. We only had 4 children at the time. We were expecting our 5th, and they were 11 down to 3.
Yeah.
And so I'm very much a family man. Faith and family are strong values of mine. So in terms of changing my worldview, this didn't really do that. It more affirmed and showed me just how valuable and how valuable the decisions I've made are, and how gracious God has been to me. So what happened the next day was I said, absolutely not, brother-in-law David. I am not getting on another airplane. I'm driving home. He said, well, okay. So we rented a car and drove 13 hours from New York City, and that was really painful. It was,
yeah, different kind of painful, but
so
yeah.
we get home Friday night. The event happened Thursday afternoon. We stayed with the president of our company's house on Long Island. He kept us, and they were so incredibly gracious and took care of us, got us new clothes. Ours were ruined. All of our stuff was destroyed. I had a wet wallet. That's all I had on my person. So, I have got my American Red Cross white towel that you'll see in the air. And when you watch the movie tonight, I still have it. That's all I had, that and a pair of sweats. So they took good care of us. We came home Friday night. Needless to say, it was a very emotional reunion to see all of our families together again. My brother-in-law's family and my family, we were all at the same house. And it was very emotional. When I put my kids to bed that night, it was I guess it meant more to me than anything. Just to be able to be with my kids and put them to bed. I mean, that's what it was. It was life. It was life I was given, an extension. I thought life was taken from me. I thought it was gone, not in a bad way, but ended in a way that I didn't want. And so to put my kids to bed that night was just a treasure. And so I still do. Every single night, I put my 2 little boys to bed. Actually, I put all my kids to bed, kind of. But I put my 2 little boys to bed. I read them stories. And those are patterns that are permanent now. I changed the way I do things. I used to be out at least a night a week on work, maybe sometimes 2. For 2.5 years, I never did an overnight after that. I felt it was so important to be at home, to be with them. I felt like my kids needed to know that flying's safe, that flying's okay. And sometimes things happen that we can't explain, but we knew that I wanted my kids to know God's in control. And so God was merciful to us and no one died. But even if we had all died or only I died, he's still just, and it was still okay. And that's what I wanted my kids to know. And so how has it practically, to answer her question, how has it practically changed my life? There weren't radical changes like some of the passengers. Some of the passengers quit their jobs. They never flew again, and they went and worked for agencies that helped other people. I haven't done that. Instead, I feel like I was on the right path, and I'll continue on that right path. But anyone that wants to know about it and wants to know that what God's done in my life, I'm happy to tell them what he's done and how grateful I am.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. As a father of 2, that's emotional, and myself as a father of 2. Yeah, it's amazing. That's great. Thanks for sharing that with us. Okay, let's transition and kind of wrap up here in just a few minutes. With the movie specifically, were you able to be on set, and what was that like? Did you meet Clint Eastwood? Were you able to meet Tom Hanks? Were you able to interact with some of the actors, that kind of stuff? Tell us about that.
There were, as I understand it, 4 sets. The main one's in Hollywood. They did a lot of filming in New York, at the waterfront, things like that, at the Marriott that you'll see tonight. The Marriott's where the crew was, how would you say it? They were put there along with NTSB personnel and et cetera. And then there was filming in Georgia, and lastly there was filming at the Charlotte Carolinas Aviation Museum in Charlotte, which is where the airplane is stored. By the way, I would definitely encourage anyone to go see it. If you're ever in Charlotte, go to the Carolinas Aviation Museum and go see the airplane. It's there now. You can always see a passenger on the weekends. It's great. So the answer to your question is yes. I was on set. All the passengers were invited to one part, and that was at the Aviation Museum. Clint Eastwood had an idea that he wanted to do an epilogue. He wanted to do a reveal, as he called it, where the crew would gather again with the passengers, and it would be an emotional reunion. And so what they did is they contacted us, and I think maybe 70 of us showed up. and we were able to spend the day filming with his team. And you'll see it at the very end. Sorry, I spoiled it for you, Shelby.
No,
I thought you'd already seen the movie.
That's good.
You'll see it at the very end, and we were able to not only watch how they filmed it, but we're able to actually be in the movie as well.
That's great. That's fantastic. Was Tom Hanks there or just Clint Eastwood?
Just Clint Eastwood. Tom, I think Tom was only available for the filming up in New York. I don't know that for certain, but I know he couldn't come down. I was hoping to meet him. I did get to meet Clint Eastwood and talk with him and get my picture made with him. And, he was incredibly gracious. Here's 70 of these pastors just fawning all over him. And he took time out to, and mind you, he's 85, or he was at the time. He took time out to talk with all of us, to take pictures with all of us. And it was a real highlight. And it was a treat to see how they professionally do their filming. I was amazed.
Yeah. And he's like revered as one of the America's most amazing directors, of course, actors. And I'm sure depending on the age of the people who were on the plane at the one time, they probably grew up watching him in like Westerns and all those kind of movies. And now they're able to meet him. Well, that's really cool that you guys got to engage. And then he was gracious to you guys and spent time with you. That's always such a special treat when that happens. Well, is there any other things that you'd like to add?
I think there's a lesson there, and I don't know if I've learned it yet. And maybe I should have after 7 years, but I think the lesson would be, even despite our fears, God is there. God is there. He is present. I don't think the absence of the thing that causes me fear, the stimulus of fear, is success, is life. I think life is found moving into your fear and trusting that God is there. And this is more intellectual for me, and part of it is internalized in my heart, but part of it's not still. But I felt like I've got to get back on an airplane. I've got to do it. My mom was sick at the time. She's since passed away and is with the Lord. But I knew I need to get back on the airplane, and so the opportunity to be on the Oprah Winfrey Show came up. And Oprah paid for all of it, and I knew I had to take that flight. And it was really difficult, especially taking off from low ground, because I thought, here come the birds. Oh, this is going to be terrible. Yeah. I anticipated that. But I think for us as believers, I think it is to, despite your fears, whatever they may be, or your concerns, or it's not getting away from those that's success. It's moving into those in faith, even if you feel you're faithless, and allowing God to show up, whatever that may look like. I think I would want everyone to leave with that and hope that it would impact their life in that way.
Yeah. Someone once told me that if you look at all the characters in the Bible who were used prominently by God, they all had one common character trait, and that was they were all fearful at some point in time. But just like you said, it was so eloquently put, that if you move into that fear, your faith is able to conquer that fear. And that's where the beauty of God showing up, and you realize in those moments, how could this be anything other than God? And he does amazing things. I think all of us wrestle with fear in different ways. Of course, you'll of course have different fears than I will, but it's a common thing that we all wrestle with. But God moves in those moments and molds and shapes our hard hearts in ways that would not ordinarily happen if we didn't experience that fear and counteract it with faith. So thank you so much for being a tangible example of someone who has done that. It's been all my pleasure to be able to speak with you today. It's just, such a treat. And for all of our audience out there who was able to watch and enjoy this time with Mike Kollmansberger, one of the survivors of the Hudson miracle. Thank you so much. Go see the movie, utilize that movie, use that tool as an opportunity to share the gospel, talk with people about Jesus, tell them that you were able to hear Mike speak and his personal experience of what happened and how his faith has shaped his worldview. So again, thank you, Mike, for being here with us today.
Thank you, Shelby.
Thanks for spending the time, and thank you for walking with Jesus. Keep it up.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.